Hello and welcome. My name is Jodi Scholes. I am your instructor for the MBLEx review course. And welcome, welcome to the classroom. Yeah, so we are here today to talk about the anatomy of the upper body. This is your MBLEx review course. This is the place where you come to prep for the massage and bodywork licensing exam. And our class, the live classes, are in three parts. And that is part number one is going to be some test taking strategy. I want you to understand that stinking test. Number one, giving you confidence, calm confidence, right? Part number two is our learning. Got today, upper body anatomy. And we've spent some time in the past on the neck. We've spent some time on the upper limb. And today, look at the major muscles of the upper body. Yeah. So the last part of class, it will dissect some questions. Yeah. So 3 parts of class, test taking strategies, learning, and then dissecting questions. All right. So let's talk a little bit about a test taking strategy and something very unique to the computer adaptive test. So our test taking strategy for today is to understand that the MBLEx is a computer adaptive test. What does that mean? That means that the MBLEx, as you may have heard, is actually going to get harder as you continue taking the test. What? What do you mean the questions get harder? Ah! That's what adaptive means. So computer adaptive, that test is going to adapt with you, with your unique responses to either get harder or get easier. Okay. Well, don't we want it to get easier? No, not necessarily. Because here's how that works. You're going to get questions when you start your exam. For the MBLEx, you are going to have 100 questions. You are going to have 120 minutes. So really about 110 minutes by the time you get done filling out all the paperwork. You will get moderately difficult questions to start your test. They will be moderately difficult, okay? You will answer either correctly or incorrectly. The next question you get will either be harder or easier. If you answered the question correctly, the next question will be a little harder. But if you didn't answer it correctly, the next question will be a little easier. So the MBLEx is trying to assess your competency in each of the 8 categories. So it's a very sophisticated test. Tricky, yes, too, but it also will adapt and produce questions that they think you can answer. It's also going to challenge you to answer questions that are at the top of your difficulty range. Now, you would say, that is awful. Just give me all the easy questions. We can't. Your goal on the MBLEx is to score 630 points. And the easy questions are worth less points. The harder questions are worth more points. Now, you do have to pass each of the 8 categories to pass the MBLEx. So you've got to pass each of the 8 categories. And so in each category, this computer adaptive test, the MBLEx, is adapting to your skill level. So while you're taking the test, you don't need to think about any of that. The only thing you need to remember is that if you're getting a difficult question, that's a good sign. That means you've answered a bunch of questions right? So be kind of like, oh, damn, this is a tough question. Oh, damn, that's a good sign. Yeah. So just roll with it. Know that that computer is adapting to find a way to get you the most points. And sometimes it'll give you a little bit of an easier question. But look forward to the difficult questions. Look forward to being really at the top of your knowledge when you go to take the MBLEx. Being at the top of your knowledge means that you're scoring the most points. So that is the computer adaptive test, the definition of what that is, which is the MBLEx, the style of test. I just want you to understand that even when you see 3 answers, some of the questions you're going to get have 3 answers, only 3 answers. That's not necessarily an easier question. It is a newer question because the entire MBLEx by 2025 will be 3 answers. But 3 answer questions are really good because you have one less wrong answer to figure out, right? So it's a good thing when you get a 3 answer question. So the MBLEx adapts. It is a computer adaptive test. Difficult questions are more points, and your goal is simply to score 630 points. So let's do some learning. All right. So anatomy of the upper body. This is an anatomy specifically for a review to prepare for the MBLEx. This is an MBLEx review course. So upper body anatomy, major muscles today. Major muscles and a little bit of movement of the upper body. So let's take a look at one section that we're going to start at. We're going to start with the arm. We're going to move into the back, and then we will do the abdomen. So these are major muscles of the upper body, but let's just review where we are. We are in the upper body. This is the arm. Here you see the humerus, the radius, the ulna. We see the bones of the hand. This is the region we're going to be starting from. You see the glenoid cavity, the little socket for the head, the proximal head of the humerus. Yes, so the glenoid cavity, the humerus, the glenohumeral joint. Let's take a look at some muscles, a few muscles of the arm. Nice clear picture. Reminder that the radius is located on the thumb side. So in anatomical position, thumb side. That makes the ulna on the pinky side. Ulna is a shorter word than the pinky. Ulna is a shorter word than the radius. Little pinky, little finger, little word. All right. The biceps and the triceps. Figured I'd start with some easy ones for you. Let's take a look. Biceps, go ahead and put your hand on your bicep. Bicep. Wait. Bicep flexes at the elbow. Bicep flexes at the elbow. So when it contracts, it gets short. When it relaxes, it expands. When the triceps, so the movement of the triceps extend at the elbow. So when we're in the gym, sometimes you see tricep extensions, extending at the elbow. And the bicep has to turn off for the tricep to contract. So for the tricep to contract, the bicep has to turn off. Good. Just a reminder, too, that every muscle is attached to a bone, that muscles are attached to the bone by the tendon. The tendon also contracts in movement. Let's take a look at the deltoid muscle. This is one of our favorites, right? The deltoid muscle. I'd like you to notice that it has an anterior, a medial fibers, and posterior fibers. And thank you, Joe Muscolino. He's a great massage educator, Joe Muscolino. One of the things I love about this picture is take a look. Here's your deltoid, guys and gals. Look where it's inserting in the posterior fibers. What does that look like? Would that be the scapula? Yes. So that posterior deltoids, the posterior fibers of the deltoids insert into the spine of the scap. But that lends itself to the movement. So what movement do you think the deltoid produces? Make the movement. All right, take a look. The major movement of the deltoid is to abduct the arm at the glenohumeral joint. So the entire muscle kicks in when it abducts, abducts at the glenohumeral joint. It also flexes. So let's go through each fibers. Take a look. We've got 4 other movements to look at. So it flexes the arm, the anterior fibers. So the front fibers flex the arm at the glenohumeral joint. The posterior fibers extend the arm at the glenohumeral joint. All right. We got 2 more movements to look at. And when we look at these movements, here is the head of the humerus, right? The head of the humerus, the proximal end of the humerus, the head of the humerus. Distal end down here at the elbow. Down here at the elbow. Distal end of the humerus. Proximal end of the humerus. So for that glenohumeral joint, we're looking at the head of the humerus. And if we medially rotate, so from anatomical position, we are medially rotating the head of the humerus by doing this movement. This is also pronation. And you may think of it, we don't really look at the end of the arm. It depends on the description of your question. But technically, just even, this is medial rotation at the head of the humerus. And the anterior fibers of the deltoid assist with that. Likewise, when we laterally rotate. The anterior fibers assist the pectoralis major to flex the shoulder. I don't know if you could hear that, but my Apple Watch was thinking I was asking a question. So lateral rotation, posterior fibers of the deltoid assist with lateral rotation. So towards the outside of the body, if you are in anatomical position, good. So that's the movements of the deltoid, the major movements of the deltoid, what it does. And so the whole deltoid, anterior, medial, and posterior, abducts the arm. Arm abduction. abduction at the glenohumeral joint. So we got to dissect that movement, right? Got to know what joint we're at. We got to know what movement is happening. That leads us to the muscle that is involved. Good work on the deltoid. Take a peek, because abduction doesn't stop here. Also goes overhead, right? So once we get beyond horizontal, once we get beyond what's called 90 degrees, let's look what else kicks in. The supraspinatus actually starts this movement. So supraspinatus is one of our rotator cuffs. Supraspinatus, it's the highest of the sits muscles of our SITS rotator cuffs. Supraspinatus starts the movement, and then the heads of the deltoid kick in. And then once we get beyond 90 degrees, we've got a little bit of help from the biceps, the trap, and then serratus anterior. We're going to look at all those muscles today, right? So all of those muscles are listed there. Take a look. Here's, we'll get another picture of supra in a minute, but we'll get another picture of all of these muscles in a moment. Bigger picture. Take a look. So since we talked about abduction at the glenohumeral joint, let's take a look at adduction of the glenohumeral joint. Major muscles of adduction are the pectoralis major, the latissimus dorsi, as you can see, latissimus, and teres major, actually for adduction. The lat being the biggest one there. But the pec major assists, teres major assists. It's a major movement. It's one of the ways I remember adduction of the arms. It's a major movement. Pec major, teres major, primary mover, lats. And you can see here we have a couple other, so coracobrachialis is also involved a little bit to tuck it in. Once you get to tuck it in fact, if you take your arms, bring them to the sides of your body, pinkies are against your legs, or pinkies are in, and squeeze down, squeeze into adduction. So squeeze your hips. That's when the coracobrachialis kicks in, and that's here in the upper arm as well. Coracobrachialis, part of the brachial plexus, also assists in adduction. A quick look at the forearm. In general, you don't really need to memorize all of the muscles of the forearm. However, please notice we've got flexors and we have extensors in the forearm. What movement do you think the flexor carpi radialis muscle is? It's a flexor, right? So does our forearm flex, right? This part of our forearm doesn't move. This is remember, the ulna and the radius. Ulna and the radius. So these bones don't flex. Where are we flexing with these flexor muscles? Ooh, ooh, ooh. We're flexing at the wrist. So we're flexing at the wrist. These are all called flexor muscles. And the extensors of the wrist, just extend your wrist. Where do you feel it? So this would be in the posterior compartment. You can even see those flexor muscles the extensor muscles kick in. So flexor of the wrist, extensor of the wrist. And it's a nice stretch to do too. Woo. But so when we activate our extensors of the forearm, they're called extensors of the forearm. one of the few places in the body where the name actually makes sense. So when we extend our extensors of the forearm to extend the wrist. Now, as I plant my elbow, I started to mention that it's a very nice stretch to do this stretch. When you do this stretch, am I stretching the flexors or the extensors? I'm letting you think about that. I'm stretching this part of the muscle, right? I'm stretching this part of this area of my forearm, the palmar or the inside in anatomical position, right? So I'm stretching these muscles and they are the flexors. Yeah. So this is a way to stretch the flexors of the forearm. When we flex the extenders, we usually make a soft fist and help that fist come down. Can feel that, right? Those you're stretching your extensors of the forearm. Good. All right. And again, with the names of the muscles in the forearm, look at this one, palmaris longus. Well, palm, right? Anatomical position. It's on the palmar side. So there's hints in these muscles of where they live. That's all I really want you to understand about the forearm. No need to memorize all those muscles. Just understand that their name gives them away. This leads us to a reminder that there are 8 carpal bones, carpals, here in the wrist. And as we look at the carpal bones, we know that those carpals lead to metacarpals and then phalanges. And there was a horrible question on a practice exam recently of how many phalanges are there? Well, there's 3 per long finger and 2 on the thumb. I don't think you'll ever get that question, but there's 14 phalanges per hand. So 1, 2. There's 2 here. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus 2 is 14. 14 phalanges per hand. All right. Moving along. Oh, just FYI, I like to mention that the scaphoid carpal is the one that's most often fractured. If someone has a fall and they usually land thumb side, right? They land with that thumb kind of down. And sometimes that scaphoid bone gets fractured. Let's move along, move along. Oh, one last way to remember how many carpal bones there are. Have you ever seen this tattoo? It's called an infinity tattoo. Well, it's the infinity, but it also looks like the number 8, right? Yeah. And so there's 8 carpal bones. And this is a beautiful example of someone who gave us the number 8 right here where our carpal bones are. An image. I learn in images, so I like to give you a few of those. And one pathology. I'm sneaking in a pathology here to our anatomy class. So it's called Dupuytren's contracture. Wrap your head around that for a second. Dupuytren's contracture. Really, the best picture of it is here, this lower picture. It is a picture of the 4th finger, the 4th and the 5th finger. And it is a condition, a pathology, where the tendon, a tendon in the hand, has thickened. So they don't know why it happens. They think it's hereditary. They think it's like from your family. But it might be associated with like epilepsy or diabetes, but they're not sure. But I just want you to know, like we don't know what causes it. We have some ideas, but you may see it in your practice. If someone comes in with thickening of the tendons here, and sometimes the little finger gets involved too, but mostly it's the fourth finger, that you can work it. You can help to relieve some of the tension, but it's literally a thickening of the tendon. So it's also sometimes called palmar aponeurosis. So palmar aponeurosis. And it doesn't really cause any pain, but it's just really inconvenient. It's hard to grab things. So a little pathology for you there. Dupuytren's contracture. Moving along to our muscles. This is a lovely picture of the latissimus. So this is the biggie, right? Latissimus dorsi. Look at where it is. So you may not realize right where it inserts, but it actually inserts on the humerus, technically called the intertubercle groove of the humerus. But just know that it attaches at the humerus, and that's why it's a major mover of adduction. So we'll see in the next picture a picture of the trapezius, but this actually overlaps. So the trapezius makes this big triangle. It's actually a trapezoid, if you know what that is. So the trap is under the lat, and the lat is overlaying. So, pardon me. So actually the lat is under the trap technically. So the trap comes down. Yeah, not that you're going to be asked that, but here we go. Trap comes right in there. We see a nice picture here of the iliac crest as well. Iliac crest, here's the pelvic girdle, the top of it, the iliac crest. Good. And we see the spine coming all the way down to the sacrum. All right. Let's also talk about the serratus anterior. Yes, the serratus anterior is sometimes called the boxer's muscle. So when you throw a punch, what happens to the scapula is that it protracts. So protraction of the scapula, throwing a punch, protracts the scapula and is the major movement of this muscle called the serratus anterior. Now, this muscle actually gets its name, as many do, from the Latin or the Greek. But have you heard of a serrated edge? So some knives are bought with a serrated edge. Yeah, it's like the steak knives with the serrated edge. And you can see here, this kind of looks serrated. Yeah, exactly. So the serratus anterior also assists with lifting the ribs lifting the ribs. So when we inhale, so lifting, inhale, and exhale. This is a respiration cycle. So be clear, especially if you have English as a second language or English as a first language, it's a good reminder. A respiration cycle is both inhalation and exhalation. It can also be called to inspiration, having inspiration, inhalation, inspiration, right? Fill your lungs with inhalation, with inspiration, and then expire, exhale. Inspiration, expiration. Inspire, to inhale. To expire, to exhale, means the same thing. But the serratus anterior is involved in the inhalation. It helps to lift the ribs, which expands the ribs, right? Lifts and expands those ribs, assisting with respiration. But the major movement of the serratus anterior is protraction of the scapula, what it's most known for. Good. While we're here at the rib cage, we're going to move around the rib cage and look at it from the front. All right, let us take a good look at this rib cage. Oh, there's so many yummy pieces to this. All right, this rib cage is also called your thorax. It is a part of the, so let's just stick with rib cage. We'll stick with this rib cage. So ribs 1 through 7 are true ribs. They are true ribs because they attach to the sternum. Here is the sternum. Touch your sternum. Right here is that sternal notch, that little divot right here. Right behind the sternal notch is the trachea. And a trachea is a part of our respiration cycle, right? It's where we inhale and exhale. It is part of our pulmonary system, our lungs, so the pulmonary system, the respiratory system. Yes. So right here, sternal notch, trachea, right in there. Yeah, the trachea. So the top of this sternal notch, at the top of this sternum, is called the manubrium. The manubrium. I hope you don't see that question, but if you do, it's a hard question. It's spelled M-A-N, man, ubrium, M-A-N-I. Yes, M-A-N-U-B-R-I-U-M. So M-A-N, man, U-B-R-I, bri, manubrium, right up in here. Good. This is the body of the sternum. And here, who can tell me what this is? Let me look in the chat. Oh, thank you for that comment about the serratus anterior, the Superman muscle. Good. All right. Oh, no, that's latissimus, right? Latissimus Superman muscle. All right. Talk to me. What is this? I'll give you a few minutes as we go over the ribs, but what is that called right there? This little pointy part it's the third part of your sternum. 1, 2, 3. Manubrium. Body. Xiphoid
process?
You got it. Yes, Mayor, xiphoid process. Well, xi. Yes, you were getting there. It is. It's the xiphoid process. Exactly. So xiphoid process, X-I-Y. X-I-Y, P-H. Xiphoid process. Right down here. Good. Look it up later. Sorry it's not labeled. I forgot. All right. So that is all of these true ribs, right through number 7, attach. Even number 7. See how that, follow it? It touches actually that rib touches the sternum. Then we got ribs 8, 9, and 10. 8, 9, 10. Now they're all still connected, right? They're not the floaters. 11 and 12 are the floaters. But 8, 9, and 10 are called false ribs. They're false ribs because they don't touch the sternum. They're still connected. They're not floaters. But ribs 8, 9, and 10 are connected via number 7. See, they all feed into this number 7, and they don't touch the sternum themselves. So 1 through 7, true ribs. 7, right? The number of completion in many spiritual communities. 7 is a beatific number. Ribs 1 through 7, true ribs. Ribs 8, 9, and 10 connect into number 7 through this costal cartilage. That is written down. Costal cartilage. So this is cartilage. So it's cartilage. Hard stuff, right? Feels like a rib, but it attaches through number 7. And then we've got number 10 and 11, the floaters. So they're not actually attached to the sternum. Those are the floating ribs, 11 and 12. Good. All right, while we're here, let's take a look at the front of the body. And we need to address a major muscle of the front of the body, and that is the pectoralis major. A lot of times we talk about the minor, pec minor. Pec minor is a little one over here. It's under the major. But let's take a look at this major because it attaches to that sternum. And what is the movement? Think about the movement of pec major. So it touches a little bit here too on the clavicle. It inserts into the humerus. So it actually inserts right onto the humerus in a little area called the bicipital groove. Yes, Mayer says the movement of the anterior pec. Ooh, we got another answer. Let's see. Well, yes. Let me let me think about that one, Miss V. Because when we are here, we are bringing the humerus, so the major movement of the pec major. Let me just see if I have it here. I don't. So the major movement is this movement, right? So if we are in anatomical position, yes, thank you, Ms. V. Yes, adduction, right? Adding to the midline of the body. That pec major, it sits kind of like this. So it attaches in the bicipital groove here and then on the sternum. So this is right about where pec major is. It's a lovely movement to massage it away from the sternum. Pec major away from that sternum. Yeah, opening up the shoulder. Thank you. Yes, exactly. What we are describing here is horizontal abduction. So what's the difference? Well, anatomical position. This is adduction in anatomical position. This is adduction. This is horizontal adduction. We're in the horizontal plane, the transverse plane. Horizontal adduction, adding to the midline to the body. Horizontal abduction. Horizontal abduction. Abduction starts from anatomical position, but horizontal gives you the clue. Okay, now we're in the horizontal plane. So traditional abduction, horizontal abduction. So the pectoralis, responsible for horizontal adduction. Good. Yes. And yes, another movement for the pec major is medial rotation. Medial rotation. Anterior delt and pec are involved, but good call on that. Yes. And good, medial rotation of this humerus. Beautiful look at the proximal end of the humerus and the distal end of the humerus. A reminder also, proximal and distal are used with our extremities. Extremities means limbs. We could say superior and inferior. That would also be correct. But the better description is the proximal and the distal. And those also imply closer to the midline of the body. Superior and inferior are straight up and down. Proximal and distal do usually imply up and down, but they're also, the proximal end is moving towards that midline of the body, whereas the distal is farther away, right? Good. All right, one more muscle. Ready? Biggie. Oh, actually two more muscles. Rectus abdominis and external obliques. We're going to talk about the external and internal obliques. Rectus abdominis. Yay. All right. You see here. Let's take a look. So we're also going to cover something called bilateral and unilateral movement. So rectus abdominis right here. It's that six-pack muscle. It is our crunch muscle. So bilateral movement, when we crunch, now this guy's doing a little bicycle, right? That's happening with his legs, a little bicycle work, right? But what's happening with his rectus abdominis? Crunch. There is movement on both sides of that muscle. And there are movements on both sides of that muscle. That is what is called bilateral contraction. Bilateral, both sides of that muscle are moving. Now, we've talked about bilateral movement in the past, and we talked about extension of the neck. So go ahead, extend your neck. Are you flexing? Okay. Extension of the neck. Extension of the neck. There are two muscles back there, both the same name, splenus capitis, and both sides of those splenus capitis, so attaching right there to the occipital ridge, that splenus capitis contracts, it shortens, and it extends our head, extends our neck, right? That's a bilateral movement. I want to bring that forward to the rectus abdominis. Bilateral. Both are getting crunched, right? Bilaterally. Because we have other muscles in our trunks that'll show us unilateral movement. Unilateral movement of the obliques. Unilateral, one side is moving. A unilateral, unicycle, unicorn, one, uno in Spanish. Unilateral movement, one side is moving. Here we're seeing a crunch of the external obliques and the internal obliques. And this also allows us, the unilateral movement, here we're doing a side crunch, but that unilateral movement also rotates the trunk. So we can rotate our head, correct? We can rotate our trunk. Yes. And so you could call that a twist, right? A twisting of the trunk. And that's a unilateral movement involving the obliques. And you get the general concept of the movement. Good. So bilateral, unilateral, rectus abdominis, internal, and external obliques. Time to dissect some questions. All right, that was a lot of muscles, you guys. It was. That was a lot of muscles. Yeah. All right. So that was a kind of a run around the upper body. But those are the major muscles. So let's dissect some questions having to do with what you just learned. And this is what happens when you take a class in the online learning center. So in the future, depending on how long you're going to be studying, if you've got an 8-week cycle, you can do the class in the online learning center to prepare for this class. So today we did upper body. In the online learning center, you have an upper body class. Now you say, well, that would have been nice to know, Jodi. Well, it's not too late. You can actually, even if you don't have time to review that class beforehand, you can attend class, hear the upper body live class, and then take it a step further and solidify your learning by watching the 1-hour lecture on the upper body anatomy. So in class, we can only get so much done, right? And so I've prepared 8 different lectures for you that take a deeper dive into the more intrinsic muscles of the upper body. But what we covered today was a pretty good review. We did not get to sits. We only did one of our rotator cuffs. So again, that's an upper body anatomy lesson. And we didn't really talk about intercostals, right? So if you want to you can look at intercostals and your rotator cuff muscles in the longer lecture. Okay, but let's go and dissect some questions. Oh, one other note about the online learning center. After you listen to the lecture or after this class, maybe you want to go do the quiz. Now that you've had a lesson in upper body anatomy, go try the quiz. Now, if you crash and burn on the quiz, listen to the lecture. This is a dynamic way to learn your upper body anatomy. And we do that in each of the 8 classes. All right. Ready? You can warm up your quiz taking skills. Here we go. You see these type of questions on the MBLEx. Sorry. It is a kinesiology question and anatomy.
Shoulder joint. Okay.
Mhm. So the group of muscles that best describes the movement of abduction at the shoulder joint. Shoulder joint. I gave it to you. They're going to tell you glenohumeral joint. Telling you right now. You got kind of a pass on this question because you know you're at the shoulder joint. So, the group of muscles that best describes the movement of abduction at the shoulder joint are, so what the question is asking, which muscles are involved in abduction of the shoulder joint? Now, there's a lot of muscles here. My strategy would be find one that's definitely not involved. You know for sure, it is not involved in abduction of the shoulder joint. So what's the movement in your seat right now? Do the movement. Start in anatomical position. We are not in the horizontal plane. We are not in the transverse plane. This is not horizontal adduction. Abduction. Do the movement. I'm not going to do it because I want you to do it. What muscle, and all these muscles, when you just scan all those muscles, what muscle is definitely not involved? Ready? Okay. Infraspinatus is not involved. Subscap? Subscap might stabilize, but infra is not involved. All right. Let me take a look at our chat. Ooh, okay. Okay. We've got a clear point of view here. All right. So the movement of abduction that we're looking for is this. And we described this specifically in class today. All right. Best answer? What starts the movement? Supraspinatus starts the movement. Deltoids, all heads. Teres minor is not involved. Sorry. Teres minor is not the helper. Biceps are the helper. Yeah. In fact, take a look at the slide, remember? Yeah. So teres minor is not involved. Infra is not involved. Teres major isn't involved. In fact, serratus anterior is actually involved once you get below above 90 degrees. That's what helping to stabilize up here. So great work. Tricky question. This would be worth a lot of points. So supraspinatus starts the movement. Deltoids, all heads. So if you look at the answer, it wasn't deltoid anterior, deltoid posterior, which implies the whole thing. And then the biceps as a helper. And also the lats aren't involved. You could have eliminated letter D too. Yeah. So it was tricky. A and B were both really good answers. But it's the biceps and the trapezius and the serratus that are the helpers there. All right. Good guess. Good guess. Let's continue on. Your client takes a kickboxing class. When she hits the heavy bag, she feels tension under her armpit. There's tightness, no pain, but a little restriction. What muscle would potentially be involved? I'm going to read the question again, and it's what I suggest you do for the MBLEx. Read the question twice. Okay. Your client takes a kickboxing class. When she hits the heavy bag, she feels tension under her armpit. Interesting. There's tightness, no pain, but a little restriction. What muscle would potentially be involved? All right. These are all muscles that she works out in her kickboxing class. But there's a key word in there. Key word that gives you the clue. I wonder if you know the key word. All right. Hopefully, Tammy, you can now see the screen. All right, Charlotte nailed it. Ms. V nailed it. Maya nailed it. You weren't tricked. Where are you, Brienne? Good. Paris. Yep. Good. iPhone, yes. I don't remember iPhone. All right. Yes, Patita. Yes. Yolanda, you got it. Mayor nailed it. Ms. V, you saw the clue. Rishan, yes. All right. What can we can eliminate one wrong answer. Let's do that. We know the rhomboid isn't involved in that movement, right? So kickboxing, right? Kickboxing, but we're kicking and we're hitting and we're doing all that. So the rhomboid is actually involved in the protraction of the movement. So I can see where you may think that's involved, but it's not under the armpit. All right, everybody who answered, I think you all got it right. Best answer, serratus anterior. Very good. You now know that's the boxing muscle. You now know it's under the armpit. Comes in like a serrated like fan under that armpit, and it attaches to the bottom part of the scapula. Good work. All right, here we go. Next question. Ooh. What ribs are considered false ribs? What ribs are considered false ribs? Answers 10, 11, and 12, 8 through 10, 1 and 2, 7 through 12. What ribs are considered false ribs? Oh, we got answers flying in now. Oh, yes. Brienne, man, answering quick. Nice work. Maya, Amanda, yes. Rashanya, huh? Mayor nailed it. Paris, yep. Patita, you got it. Yolanda, Marcia, Ms. V, yep. I was like, chime in, Ms. V. Okay. Okay, let's eliminate one wrong answer. It's not 7 through 12, right? That's a weird combination package there. All right, so it's A, B, or C. Best answer, you guys all got it. Boom, B. Yes, 8 through 10. Remember, 11 and 12 are the floaters. 8, 9, and 10 are the falls. You were not tricked. Good job. Oh boy. Okay. What best describes the movement of a sit-up? The exercise sit-up. Exercise sit-up could also be called a crunch. What best describes the movement of a sit-up? A, unilateral rectus abdominis. Bilateral rectus abdominis. Unilateral of obliques. Bilateral of obliques. Ooh, we got the answers rolling in. Let's see. Good, Maya. Amanda nailed it. All right. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, yep. Brienne, you got it. Yep. Marcia, Paris, Patita. Yep, this one's a little tricky, right? A little tricky. Are you thinking of the rectus abdominis as one unit or two? Hmm? Mm-hmm. I know. I know. There's a little gray area here, to be honest with you. But let's eliminate one wrong answer. Are the oblique muscles, thinking about it, are those one or two? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's get rid of one. We know it's not, we can't even do bilateral oblique. It's physically impossible. So that can't be right. All right. Best answer, bilateral contraction of the rectus abdominis. I would also accept unilateral rectus abdominis because you might be thinking of that rectus as one side, right?
Yes.
Answers, yes. All right, best answers, bilateral. Technically, biologically, we think there's a big piece of cartilage in the middle there of that rectus, not cartilage, of fascia in there. But you could make an argument either way for unilateral or bilateral. All right, y'all. That is a wrap. All right. Good work. Super job. Woo! That was a lot. That was a lot. Let's share. Let's go to, yeah. Boy, that was a lot of muscles and a lot of thinking, but you nailed it. So congratulations. Check the box. You have taken a step forward in your journey to passing the MBLEx. It's official. You just spent time learning. You just spent time reviewing. Even if it was a baby step, just a baby step towards being more prepared for the MBLEx. So good on you. And this journey, it was Tao Latz, sorry, Tao, that said, The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And for some of you, you may feel like this has been a journey of 1,000 miles. That's okay. You know what I'm here for? The last step. The last step. You, with the pass paper in your hand that says pass. Yes, yes, and yes. If your journey has felt like it's been 1,000 miles, well, then all the more rewarding to take that last step. And I'm here for it. I'm your accountability buddy, and I'm here for it. My name is Jodi Scholes. I'm your instructor for the MBLEx review course. For those of you watching later, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you again real soon.